We believe in a government of the people, by the people, for the people. A government accountable to its citizens, reflecting their needs and aspirations. Yet behind this facade of democracy lies a different story. Corporations, with their vast wealth and influence, have become puppet masters. They manipulate the levers of power, shaping policies to serve their interests, often at the expense of the common good. This is not a conspiracy theory, it's the reality of modern America. The illusion of government independence is carefully crafted and maintained. We are bombarded with narratives of political battles, partisan divides, and ideological clashes. While these exist, they often distract from the underlying reality. The real power brokers operate behind the scenes, pulling the strings of those we elect to represent us. They ensure that the rules of the game favor their interests. This corporate control is not absolute, nor is it always overt. It's a subtle and insidious process, often operating below the radar of public awareness. Corporations understand that blatant manipulation is counterproductive. They prefer to work quietly, influencing policy decisions through a complex web of lobbying, campaign contributions, and media manipulation. Their goal is not to overthrow the system but to game it from within, ensuring outcomes that benefit their bottom line. Lobbying, in its essence, is about persuasion. It's about presenting information and arguments to policymakers in the hope of influencing their decisions. However, when corporations lobby, the game changes. Their vast financial resources allow them to deploy armies of lobbyists, many of whom are former government officials with insider knowledge and connections. These lobbyists wine and dine politicians, shower them with campaign contributions, and offer them lucrative job opportunities after they leave office. This access and influence create a system of legalized bribery. Politicians, dependent on corporate donations to fund their campaigns, are beholden to their donors. They are more likely to support legislation that benefits these corporations, even if it contradicts the interests of their constituents. This revolving door between government and corporations creates a conflict of interest. It undermines the integrity of our democracy and erodes public trust in our elected officials. The influence of corporate lobbying extends far beyond campaign contributions. Corporations also fund think tanks and research institutions. They provide grants to universities and influence the curriculum of academic programs. They shape public opinion through advertising and media ownership. This multi-pronged approach ensures that their message is heard loud and clear at all levels of government and society. The consequences of this corporate capture of government are felt most acutely by ordinary Americans. When corporations dictate policy, the needs of the many are sacrificed for the profits of the few. We see this in our healthcare system, where pharmaceutical companies lobby for higher drug prices, making life-saving medications unaffordable for millions. We see it in our environmental regulations, where polluting industries lobby for weaker environmental protections, putting our health and planet at risk. We see it in our labor laws, where corporations lobby against minimum wage increases and worker protections, eroding the bargaining power of working families. The examples are endless and the pattern is clear. When corporations control the government, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. The gap between the haves and the have-nots widens, undermining social mobility and exacerbating inequality. This corporate influence also undermines our democracy in more insidious ways. When citizens feel like their voices are not heard, they become disillusioned with the political process. They become cynical and apathetic, less likely to vote or engage in civic life. This apathy creates a vicious cycle. It allows corporations to further consolidate their power and influence, knowing that they face little resistance from a disengaged public. Uncovering the truth behind the corporate government facade requires vigilance and a critical eye. We must learn to see through the propaganda and misinformation that permeates our media and political discourse. We must be willing to follow the money, to trace the connections between corporations, politicians, and the policies they enact. Independent journalism plays a crucial role in this endeavor. Investigative reporters and media outlets willing to challenge corporate power are essential for holding the powerful accountable. We must also educate ourselves about the issues that matter most to us. We must understand how corporate lobbying affects our lives and our communities. We must be informed voters capable of seeing through the empty rhetoric and false promises of politicians beholden to corporate interests. Knowledge is power, and an informed citizenry is the best defense against corporate manipulation. The internet has provided us with unprecedented access to information. We can use this access to research the voting records of our elected officials. We can track campaign contributions and identify the corporations and industries that fund their campaigns. We can connect with like-minded individuals and organizations working to expose corporate influence and advocate for policies that benefit the common good. Reclaiming our democracy from the grip of corporate control will not be easy. It requires a sustained and coordinated effort from citizens, activists, and organizations committed to the common good. We must demand campaign finance reform that reduces the influence of money in politics. We must push for stricter lobbying regulations that limit the revolving door between government and corporations. We must support independent media that is not beholden to corporate interests. We must hold our elected officials accountable for their actions and demand that they represent the interests of their constituents, not the interests of their donors. This requires active participation in the political process. We must vote in every election, contact our representatives, and make our voices heard on the issues that matter to us. Ultimately, the power to reclaim our democracy rests in our hands. Corporations are not invincible. They are not above the law. They derive their power from our acquiescence, from our willingness to accept the status quo. When we, the people, stand together and demand better, we can create a system that works for everyone, not just the wealthy and powerful.